Thank you. The prayer I'm going to use this morning is from Bishops United Against Gun Violence, and it's under the auspices of the Episcopal Public Policy Network. And this is from a prayer service of lament for gun violence that was held March 1st in 2019. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O God, who remembers, we hold before you all who have died from the plague of gun violence in our land. We remember those who have taken their lives with a gun, those who have died in school shootings and mass shootings, those who have died by a gun in the course of an argument, or from abuse, or by accident, or during the commission of a crime. We lift our voices in sorrow and frustration, knowing that every life is infinitely valuable to you. Receive all who have died into the arms of your mercy. Bless those who mourn with the hope of eternal life, and strengthen our hearts and our arms to bring an end to this scourge. This we pray in the name of the one who overcame the power of death, your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much, Reverend Patterson. Now there's a man who reads his agenda. He knew we were going to be working with gun violence today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Lentori, I don't think I've ever talked on the phone with anyone who moved me more than you did, who I wanted to listen to for a day and a half and never hang up. Your passion for the children of this city and beyond is a great gift to the community and to us. Please tell us about the program that you founded, the essay contest, about your son, anything you want to say. We are all ears and open hearts. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Denny, for inviting me. You be very careful about what you ask for now.
Excuse me one second.
When I'm talking about certain topics. Go ahead, Nisi. I'm sorry.
Can you pull your camera down just a little? We can't see your whole face.
This one is
there you go.
a little bit more.
We can see you now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend Patterson, for that prayer. I haven't seen him in a while. I would have liked to have seen his face. We go back a little while. But I do thank each and every one of you for being here with me this morning on this call. And I was very, very interested when Denny called me and asked me to come this morning to speak about the essay contest, because indeed it is something that I'm very purposed about. I lost my child, for those of you who do not know. My child was one of the 3 victims at the Boys and Girls Club shooting. It occurred in 2015, August 19th of 2015. JR would be one of 3 victims who would lose their life on that fateful night. My child, JR, he was the father of 2 children, Jemiah, his daughter, and Jaquil, his son, who's the oldest. I tell everyone I'm co-parenting along with their mama, Markeisha Chess, since JR was violently taken from us. He died of a head wound. He was the only one of the victims who was transported from Genesee Street that night to a hospital. And when I got that call that night, all I could think about when I heard there had been a shooting, well, Lord, he's in the hospital. So I felt like, okay, I got to get there, but you know, he's coming home, and no matter what, he had just gotten a job that he felt gave him the means to really support his 2 children in a fashion that he wanted. The Saturday before he would lose his life, he took him shopping, and he spent almost every bit of that first paycheck he had earned on his children. By Wednesday, he was gone. That Wednesday evening when the shooting occurred, he was no longer to be with us. He died of a gun wound from an AK-47. It was a head wound. How my child was one of the ones who would be lifted from that pavement and taken to Strong Memorial Hospital. I still cannot even begin to think of how that could have happened, being that he had such a grave wound. And one of the doctors who I would come to know after the trial, she tried to comfort me by saying, but I'd already pulled his paperwork from Strong about what was in the notes that night when he arrived at Strong. And in it, they said he had agonal respiration. And she said, well, with the wound he had no idea. But see, there was no comfort in that for me.
No.
Because see, I knew him better than they did. He came at a time when I had a hard pregnancy. God delivered him to me. And I knew that night he fought for his life. There's not a doubt in my mind. Even with the wound he had sustained, the JR fought for his life. I want to preface it by giving honor to Reverend Lewis Stewart, who I would meet after I would go to the parking lot of the Boys and Girls Club. And there were many ministers that would be there that night speaking. But he was the only one who had something to say that somehow touched me. It touched me enough before I left that parking lot that night and before I even knew what all of the arrangements would be for his funeral. I would ask of him to speak at my child's funeral. I became a member of UCLM, United Christian Leadership Ministry. I remained a part of that. The first year of the essay contest started during COVID. I worked with Reverend Stewart for a while, and I really, really could not think, other than just staying close to him, trying to heal from the loss of my child, trying to find whatever my purpose was, because God gave me the purpose, even in the loss of my child. And I think anybody who goes back and look at the newspaper article on the day of his funeral, every pallbearer had on the t-shirt they would wear at his funeral the message I know God gave me. And that was a call for change, the taking back of our communities. Because gun violence has escalated to a point where it's unforgivable to me to think that there's people who sit in high places who govern the laws of this land, and they will do absolutely nothing to change this climate of gun violence. And as Reverend Patterson would tell you even during the prayer, we are losing lives every day in mass shootings. Last year alone, we had 649 mass shootings. Imagine that. And it's just beginning to at least be something that the public is hearing. And I think still many are deaf because they're not paying attention to those numbers. Now, when I say 649 shootings throughout this nation, that does not address the day-to-day carnage that happens in America every day. And then in the suburban areas, the taking of young people or anybody's life usually comes because there is a gun in the home. And ultimately, it will be used in a suicide. And while I sat there during those trials, and I attended every one of the named perpetrators' trials, there were veterans who came and sat in the Hall of Justice, who would engage me in conversation, and the other family members. And one thing that they all said to me that has never left me was this: they were veterans of war, And if it was left up to them, this weapon of war that would take my child's life and he was not on anyone's battlefield
No.
would never be allowed, should never be on the streets of America. It's something that veterans don't even entertain the thought of owning. Imagine that. Imagine that. So as I was saying to you, I wanted and waited for God to give me my directives. I knew I was already purposed. Like I tell people, I was retired. I could have closed the curtains in my home and retreated from the world and just tended to the business of raising his two beautiful children among my other grandchildren. But I decided that was not going to be, because see, I deeply, deeply loved my child, deeply loved him. JR was one of 3 children I would bring into this world, and he was my youngest child. So after spending several years with Reverend Stewart, heading up the Light the Way, which is part of the anti-gun violence up under United Christian Leadership Ministry, I decided the children, after visiting and talking to them in the schools, in the rec centers here in our community, they had to be given a focus. They had to have a platform. Because one thing that has very much impacted me was this: the legislators, the lawmakers, they're not listening to us, the adults in the equation. But what about the voices of the children? And I want to say this to you. I started going into rec centers. In the city of Rochester, if you remember, in the rec center as a child, you can only start attending when you're 6 years old, and they go from 6 to 21. Imagine me in a closed setting, a sacred setting with these children, after they would hear my story, and I would get them to open up and talk about gun violence. 6-year-old children, when I would ask the question, how many of you recognize gunfire when you hear it, raise their hands. It's not a third world country. My son-in-law is from a third world country. So this is something, like he said, they're very familiar with in their country. They build trenches in the back of the homes they live, so that when bombings start, gunfires from whoever's, dealing, they go in. Even as children, they learn to go to the trenches and jump in. So God laid it in my heart that if they're not hearing us, hear the voices of our children. This is why I do the essays. This will be my 3rd year of essays that will address Viva the children, their thoughts about gun violence, how they're impacted directly or indirectly, what they feel about what is occurring with the gun violence in their communities. Because in urban settings, yes, they understand it, but it's not lost in suburban neighborhoods either, and should be of deep concern. There's a question I ask of the children where I've gone into the schools where they've been labeled the difficult students. And so one of the questions I asked when I went in to talk to them is this: why do you think we haven't had mass shootings in urban schools? It's never lost on them. Almost automatically, they respond. And probably many of you don't even understand it, but they did. Because they walked through metal detectors to enter their schools, or they're in lockdown. High schools, you walk through a metal detector. You come to visit in those schools, a metal detector. This is not appropriate. This is not how young people or children should have to live their life. JR 2 children attend One is at Nazareth Elementary, the other one is at Caucus. I hate hearing children in urban schools say they have learned, and those children in those schools say, how to take refuge in case their schools are under gunfire. Now that's crazy to me. And the fact that the Biden administration this week, in the last couple of days, has had to come out and say he's going to do an executive order. Should not take an executive order for us to stop the issue of gun violence in the United States of America. It should not have to take that, and it is not enough. But see, I live every day to hear about what will come about to make a difference. Well, I said to myself, maybe the children know it, because they're not listening to anyone else. So for me, these essays are important. They're important because it's an opportunity for the children in our community to tell you directly how they are impacted based on gun violence. And there are many of those children who live in homes where they have lost loved ones. And the other thing that was very evident in going into the centers and into the schools is they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it because someone in the house is still struggling with the loss of a loved one. Someone in the house, they feel grandma or mama is up on under such trauma that we dare not talk about it. And then these children, some of them become not just victims, but perpetrators. And they do that, and ask yourself, why would it not happen? They fear how they live in their communities. They know that they have to, or feel that they have to, carry a weapon just in case. Just in case. Because they know what the odds are out here in the community on a day-to-day, how they might be impacted by gun violence. And so people judge without understanding how these children are affected. I had the pleasure of meeting one young man who would be among many, but his story always sticks out to me. We did 3 sessions over at the David Gantz Center, located at 700 North Street. And this young man would attend all 3 of those sessions. He was a large built child, but he was very young. And on the last day of the session, he came to me and 2 other individuals who were there with me, conducting those talks, those discussions that we would go about having before COVID with the children. And he was the last one that night that would leave the room. And this is what he shared with us. He said, I'm glad you came. I'm glad I got a chance to hear your story. He said, because I'm bullied all the time. And he's a large child. He said, I got a gun. And I was going to kill some of those who were hurting me. He said, but because of what you all talked about, I decided I wasn't going to do that. Because see, the loss of my child wasn't just my loss. My child was in his latter 20s. He was almost to have his birthday. His life was taken in August. His birthday would have been in October. He was the oldest of the 3 young men who would lose their life. J.R. was the oldest one. And he was 26 years old, 26. Raekwon Manigo was 19. Jonah Barley was 18 years old. Jonah didn't even know what was going on. He had his headphones on. They had been at a basketball game. And he was headed home. He didn't even hear the gunfire. There is documentation of that night because of the videotaping that was on a business adjacent to the Boys and Girls Club. I had to sit and watch my child standing in one moment and watched as the vehicle proceeded down Genesee Street, him go from standing to lying on the streets of Genesee. I did not have to stay out there all night as Tammy Barnett would do, who is the mother of Raekwon Manigault. As Jonah Barley family, Anita and her husband would have to do. Because God he allowed for my child to be lifted off those streets. And he was able to make it to a hospital, even though I would lose him. And even then, to arrive at a hospital and be denied the opportunity to go in and comfort my child.
It's okay.
In his final moments of life. My pregnancy with JR was so difficult till I could not believe when they told me that I had a perfect child who had arrived in this world. When they finally brought him to my room that night, after a long labor, the nurses, they teased me for a while. I totally undressed him. I examined him from head to toe, fingers and toes, all of his whole being, because I could not believe that pregnancy, my last pregnancy, would be so horrific that God would let me have this perfect human being. I felt that it was my right to be able to walk in that room and see my child while he was even in his breath, struggling for his life. I was locked out. So I couldn't even tell him, it's okay. Let go. So see, trauma is real. Trauma is something I try to process even now in my 70 plus years. What do y'all think it's like for these babies, our children? And let me tell you, I sat in those rooms in the rec centers and in the schools. So I have witnessed, and they have felt comfortable, trusted enough to share with me the traumas that they've had. Losing a 3-year-old brother who died because he was shot with a gun that was in the home illegally. These things are real. And so many people sit in high places in comfort and think that this can continue and not touch you. Well, I'm here to tell you it will, and it can. He might not have had certain things that other communities had, but he was loved, my child. I gave all to him. He attended schools I wanted him to attend at a sacrifice. Because I loved him. I loved him. His children loved him. We miss him every day. He left me in 2015, and I still struggle. But my comfort, I tell people, when I go to the schools, when I've gone into the centers, it's hard. And I go sometimes with a heavy heart. But when I sit and I listen to those young people, I leave with more than I think I bring. And there's been people who are on this conference call now who have been there with me at the times when we've walked in. I want their voices heard.
Mhm.
The essays create the platform for them to be heard. I am purposed that they will be heard. So not only will we continue with the essays, but I am seeking to publish 3 years of these essays and moving forward until this country sees fit to change the climate of the gun violence that is escalating. It is at epidemic proportions in this country. I have purposed that those essays will be published every year. We will chronicle the voices of the children. So see, I don't do this without a thought.
Mhm.
I do it because somewhere, somehow, somebody has to be touched enough to move this epidemic. Everybody fought with the COVID. Everybody knows that there's something for the flu. Why haven't we found something to deal with the gun violence? It's inexcusable that this continues. So for those of you who support it, I do need the support. More to the point, the children need the support. So I am asking you, each of you, to consider the fact that these young lives are worthy of that. Because I promise you, if we don't do something, do not blame these children when they become perpetrators, because you make it so unbearable for them to feel that they can safely leave their homes and return to the arms of their loved ones at the end of what should be nothing but a perfect day. You go to school, you come home. They can't go to church nowadays and feel like they can come home. They can't go to a rec center, a center that my child could never have believed he was going to be there because he had never attended Boys and Girls Club. But he was there with a population that he felt would be able to appreciate music that he was creating and had put on CDs. So I'm asking for your help.
How can we help? How
You
can we help?
by sponsoring, by monetary, by getting out here with our children, by moving on this thing about gun violence. See, because nobody really cares a lot of times until it's theirs. And so what I say to you is this: whatever we do for this purpose, it cannot be a moment. It must be a movement.
Mhm. It
And it
must.
has to come from all communities.
Mhm.
Because whether you believe it or not, you're affected. And you will not go untouched. Because see, just like the virus, which was the COVID or the flu viruses, it doesn't contain itself. It grows and it manifests. So I want you to think about that.
Lentori, I heard you speak once before, and it was only a couple of months after the massacre at the Parkland, Florida, Marjorie Stoneham Douglas School. And I brought almost all of our grandchildren with me to the protest that was at Washington Square Park. And the mounted police there told us they'd never seen more people at a rally in Rochester. Never, ever. We all know that the nation wants sensible gun control. And yet the legislators seem to be bought by the NRA.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So what we have to do is be more present, more vocal. I personally would like to mail one of the essays you receive to every congressperson. I really do. Not wait for the book to be published. You know, we'll get that out too when it's ready, but that takes time. But the first good one you get, I want to mail this to every congressperson. We've got to make a change. The Prime Minister of New Zealand was able to make a change in a few weeks.
Second gun violence incidents.
Yeah. The people of Australia got it
Yes,
changed within a few weeks.
Yeah.
We are the worst nation for this. And it's Denise Johnson, would you like to say a few words?
Not really, just, like you said, you've heard Lentori speak before. That's actually my aunt. So I have so much love for her and her passion for this project.
Thank you.
I just had to come on board with it and
Thank you.
see how I could help out.
Yeah. What I wanted to also say about that rally that was just a few weeks after the Parkland massacre, also speaking that day, was a student at Brockport who said she hid under the desk at Sandy Hook.
Yes, she did. I didn't forget her.
Never forget her. I have.
No. That was the other thing too. I tell people, JR was alive when Sandy Hook happened.
Yes.
And I remember, I was devastated. I was like, who would do this? I was crying about it.
Yeah.
And I said to him, and it was an AK-47, no less, on those babies.
Yeah.
And I said to him, surely they'll do something now. You know what he said to me? He said, no, they won't, Mom.
Oh.
I said, JR, they will, because they have to.
They have to.
And my child. I said, because these are their children. And take no offense, but this is the seriousness it was to me. I said, because they're blonde and blue-eyed. We're losing our children every day.
Yes.
Lost some close friends. Is to gun violence. They were almost right in the row, right? And he said, no, they won't. And you know what? They did not.
We're going to make it happen.
I'm waiting.
Reverend Marilyn, your hand is up.
Yes, I just like to say, Lentori many days, and I was just so enamored of the young people that spoke and read their essays this past May. And one of the things that I realized, sometimes children don't know how to release. And nowadays, back in my days, we journaled a lot, but they don't know how to release. But one of the things that these kids did, as you listen, when we had the presentation of the winners, it was so heartfelt to hear these young people talk about how our brother was there, how our uncle was there. And then the next thing you know, uncle ain't there no more, or brother not there no more. So it made such a big difference. And I will continue to walk side by side with Lentori through this, because this is her core. This is her heart. And as long as Lentori tells the story, JR lives. He lives.
He does.
I never got to meet JR. I never got to meet him, but I feel like I know JR. So I've got to bow out for a while, but I will still be listening in.
Good.
Love you, Lentori.
Love you more.
Thank you, Marilyn. Is there anyone else that has anything to say to Lentori at this time? Or shall we go on now to Carlos? Oh, Ralph, yes.
Tori, it's hard to speak, because every time you do, every time I hear more of the story, my heart aches. So I only have a glimpse of what you and your family and neighbors and church community, all folks who were part of your loving support and neighbors and everyone. So I only have a glimpse of that, but I'm deeply moved by your sharing this morning. And I just wanted to also share in the chat are some of the documents, a link to some of the documents that the core team that are working on this essay contest to enable children to share what's on their hearts and minds about gun violence in our community and the losses in their family and neighborhoods, and their vision for what we need to be about and what, so as they find their voice through pen, pencil, we were talking about possibly rap songs, which is poetry, which is poetry, and various forms of expression that that we will, each of us, reach out in our community, whether we are involved in tutoring or mentoring of children, whatever mechanism we have to encourage children in the city of Rochester, whether in public schools, charter schools, private schools, homeschooled, to have the opportunity to share what's on their minds about what needs to be done in Rochester. So I offer that, and it's in the chat, and I understand, Denny, that we can include it in this and other documents perhaps, or in the follow-up to our meeting this morning.
Yes, I will
you.
definitely. Could you send all those letters, all those numbers and letters to me in an email, and I will forward that to everybody.
Will do.
Also, is in that data the date, the place where we should send our monetary donation? Or is that something else you can provide for us? The place, the address?
The address is in the letters, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
Ralph.
okay, good.
And it starts the moment you guys do it. We're already in planning.
And
our
when's
target date for the essay readings this year is going to be May 20th. So
that's the last day an essay can be submitted?
No, that's the target date for the presentation. The last day for submission, Ralph, if I'm not mistaken, is May 10th, I think it was, that we got. But Ralph should have in that link, the save the dates, and it clearly defines all of that information.
And is this for all children? What ages?
It's for children from 4 to 12 this year. And that's because we have a very passionate educator on board. And he was very upset the first year that we only did from 6 to 12. So Dale encouraged us to, try to add in that group. And I think you all can understand why. Yes.
The deadline is May 1st.
May 1st?
Yes.
May 1st is the deadline. May 5th to 10th is the judging. May 11th, the winners will be contacted, and May 20th will be the award ceremony. All of that is in the link in chat. If you can open chat in the bottom of your Zoom call, you can open the chat and click on the link. The information is there, and all of these documents. So the save the date, which has that, the outline for the essay, there's students to use, and teachers is there. the flyer regarding the flyer which can be distributed,
Good.
which includes the prize money associated with that to encourage, and then also the donation letter with the details of how to donate. All of
Okay.
those documents are in the attachment. Yes,
Thank you. That's what we need. Great.
And
Thank
then
you so much.
If I could just ask of you all before I leave, could you please, for those of you who are tutoring, we want our children to have this opportunity, if they should so desire, to be able to express themselves. So please encourage them. We've had some teachers who do writing groups, and they use that opportunity to get the children started with it. So we would appreciate your support of this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Lynn Torrey. And is this for all children in the wide metropolitan Rochester area?
It's for the children. We've left it. They can be attending any school, but in urban settings, we want to expand.
Only urban settings.
But we
Okay.
know that it's going to take time to outreach all of where we want to go. So we're doing good, because the first year
Yes.
we did it, we only had 4 schools because of COVID.
Uh-huh.
And so last year it got bigger, and this year we wanted all of the
I
children.
hope every school has a major
It
effort.
shut down. so
Major
we wanted
thrust.
them in. Yes. Thank you so much, Denny. It was such a pleasure to meet you and talk with you.
And it's wonderful to have you on board. And I hope that you and Denise will stay on and listen now to Carlos
I will
and
definitely do that
Angie,
for a while,
because
because I
this will
know
be,
Carlos. Yes. I
yeah,
will do.
this is going to be very powerful information that Carlos and Angie are sharing.
No doubt.
To do with mental health after coming out of work with Action for a Better Community and Together Now. And it's a direct response to a RAISE recommendation. And we are not hearing enough about responding to those RAISE recommendations. We had at this meeting, former Mayor Bill Johnson and Muhammad Shafiq and Bruce Potter, who were heading up that RAISE commission. And they presented that document to us the day after they presented it to Bello and Warren, the county executive and our mayor at the time. So
I'm very
we are
familiar with it. So yes, thank you. And
So
I will stay.
yeah.
I will stay, and I did work. I want you to understand, in the office.
Yeah. And all of you,
37 years,
if you
so
want
I
to
know.
grab something to eat, since this is lunchtime, go right ahead. We love to see jaws moving. But now we're going to hear Carlos and Angie give their presentation.
Thank you so much. Lenturi, you're going to be a hard act to follow. You really moved me. Thank you for sharing your experience. So my name's Angie Brown, and I know Carlos and I are just here for a short time. We have to hop off it by 1:15. So I want to give you all just a quick introduction, and then I'll pass it over to Carlos to give a little more detail. We've been working together for the better part of a year on community health advocacy peer system. And as was stated, it's a solution that we have come up with together, really in direct response to the RAISE Commission report. We feel that, based on the support and the positive affirmation we've received so far in sharing this idea, that this is a solution that is really pointed at helping get community members who are needing behavioral health supports connected with peers, that we see this as a really good solution, and really pointed at what RAISE Commission recommendation was asking the county and the city to do. So our approach in brief is that we want to train and deploy certified peers that are African American, Latino, multilingual, LGBTQ+, and we want those peer advocates to be able to go out into community and work with individuals who have a behavioral health need that is best served by peers. We've done the research, and we can see that, based on the PIC team, or the person in crisis team, and how that work is going, there's still a very high number of individuals that are being hospitalized. And in looking at that and looking at the recommendations of experts like SAMHSA in this space, we know we can draw on the recommendations and the workflows outlined in their toolkit to do better. We actually think with this solution in place, we'll be able to reduce the number of hospitalizations conservatively by half. And what that means is with CHAPS in place, we would be able to achieve stabilization and avoid hospitalization for over 900 people a year. This is not a new idea. This is an approach that has been talked about for a number of years, not only in the Race Commission report recommendations, but also in the Rochester Latinx Agenda report published in 2021. The bottom line is it's going to take a lot in funding to establish and pilot this solution. We've put a budget and plan together for getting it up and running for the first 3 years. At this point, what Carlos and I are really in need of is support via letters of support. And so if what we share with you today moves you, I will supply a letter of support template that you could review and edit to your heart's content. And if you're comfortable sharing, we intend to present our proposal in a package of our support letters to the county and the city, because we see them as being primarily responsible for funding this, since it is something that came out of their report. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly move through a couple of the logistics. In this plan, we've identified that Action for a Better Community, Carlos's home agency, would be the lead for this, but it's not, just creating a new program. We know the story here. We have a lot of nonprofits, a lot of programs. This is actually about pulling community partners together to work in coordination with one another. And so you can see from the bubbles surrounding ABC, there's a lot of partners who have already said, we think this is, we think you're onto something. We'd really like to see you pull this off, inclusive of the city council and county. We've had really good initial conversations with them. Now we just need them to come up with the funding. I'm going to go ahead and advance forward. I did share already that this is directly responsive to the details of the Race Commission report. So as many of you know, that recommendation talks about, this is not a program that is run or owned by the county or the city. It's an independent organization. There's coordination across agencies, and that really the most important part is that we make sure that to best serve underrepresented communities, we're bringing on peers that are diverse, Black, Brown, proficient in Spanish and or ASL. These are people that we need to be bringing on, not really focusing on the lived experience and trying to get peers out into community whose lived experience better reflects the people that they're connecting with. Also important is that the employees, the peers, and those that are working on this are paid a living wage, right? A wage that reflects the importance of this role. So it's not something that, we would be, asking people to pour all of their time and energy into working as peers for little compensation. So that's another part of the recommendation we emphasize in our solution. With that, I want to go ahead and have Carlos talk to you a little bit about how this would work. And in this situation, Carlos is going to describe to you how an individual might be helped if we have CHAPS in place. And we've put this journey map together so that it would help really quickly bring you into the experience of what this would be like what is the change we want to see. And so we also highlight some of the current pain points or opportunities that we think this solution addresses. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Carlos.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to give you a little map of what it is that we're trying to do with an example here. So let's talk about Juan, who happens to be a 35-year-old Latino man who's been in and out of recovery for the past 5 years. So happened that one he relapsed. But he has a friend, Manuel, who, he finds him drugged up, and he's concerned about his buddy, Juan. So what he does is start thinking, man, this guy, my friend here is a danger to himself because he's acting irrational. So he's also concerned that he could get in trouble, especially legal trouble. So you don't want to call 911 because sometimes they send the police and becomes worse than it should be. So what he does, he calls chat. His goal is to get Juan the help he needs without the police being involved. Of course, sometimes you need them, sometimes you don't. So Juan was clean for about a year, before he relapsed. So he has a job, has an apartment. He doesn't want to lose his job or his apartment. So he's upset. He's, look what happened, look what I did, what I'm going to do now, He's not thinking about detox. He's not thinking about recovery. He's just thinking about what he's done and how things are going to get worse from there on because he's been there. So his buddy Manuel calls CHAP, which is Community Health Advocacy Peer System, on behalf of his friend. So he gets connected to a guy who happens to be a mental health professional who will be always 24/7 available. And he starts talking to Carlos, who happens to be the mental health professional. I use names that I could remember. So Carlos asks Manuel a couple of questions, and then he says, "Hey, how about if you include him in a video call so that we could talk to Juan and see what he's doing now?" So Carlos asks the standard screening questions. There is something called a locus, which is was created by psychiatrists in the United States, and it gives you the acuity of the crisis. If it's high, middle, low, so they're able to determine that when they get the call and do the locus. So one needs help answering some of the questions because, of course, he's drugged up, he's angry, acting irrational. So his friend Manuel helps him answer some of those questions. So by Carlos doing the locus, he's able to identify two immediate needs for Juan. And one is he needs detox and he needs a peer addiction advocate. So Carlos dispatches Arturo, who happens to be a peer and a peer addiction advocate, he sends him to Juan right there on the spot. So he also starts looking for a bed in a detox center and also works with a case manager to be able to help one get admitted. And this case manager's name is Chad. So Chad is working with Carlos and Arturo to be able to get the things that Juan needs in order to get his crisis taken care of. So Arturo talks to Juan about the relapse and going to detox because that's Arturo's expertise. That's the life that he lives, and this is the experience that he's using. And he tells him, listen, maybe we could get you into a detox. I know I've been there, I've done that. So Juan decides, yeah, I want to do this. He's already thinking now more rational. So Arturo helps Juan get ready so that he could take him to the detox center, but he's not going to tell him just go by himself. He's going to actually go with him and bring him there. This is what we want to do with the peers. We want the peers to be there in an all-around service, not to just talk to the person and just let them go, because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So they call an Uber, and Arturo takes Juan to the detox center. Juan is admitted. He does his 8 days stay. And so while he was in there, the case manager, Chad, is working on his transition. So now when he comes out of detox, usually what they do is they give you all right, you're feeling better? See ya. We'll talk about you later. You should do this, you should do that. Well, no, we're going to have Arturo there waiting for Juan so that he could help him in the transition. But Chad, the case manager, is already working for him. So he gets Juan evaluated to go into an outpatient program. Now, an outpatient program is because he had a job, he had an apartment, we don't want to lose it. So look, man, you need this help. We're going to put it in there for you. We got you someplace that you could go. And so after his 8 days of detox treatment, one goes right into an outpatient program. So he transitioned from detox to an outpatient program. And now from there on, we keep working with Juan. If he wants the help only, we don't want to intrude. We want to be able to help him when they want to help, because some people, you help them to, take a couple of steps and then they tell you, it's okay, I don't need your help anymore, thank you. But the deal is that we gave them service all around. We didn't let them go, and we're going to keep contact with him. Arturo is going to keep talking to him so they're able to help him with everything that he needs in order for him to overcome the crisis, but after overcoming the crisis, also be able to follow up with the stuff that he needs to do in order to stay clean. So the pain points that we have is that mental health professionals can assist Manuel, who happens to be his friend. He's the friend now. Even though he called, they're able to talk to him now. In some places you can't. You got to have the individual. So how can you talk to an individual who's irrational? We want to eliminate that so that we don't have to have other entities come in. So he was able to get the help through Manuel, which is awesome. And then we're going to coordinate services. We're going to have mental health professionals, peer advocates, and we're also going to have case managers. We're going to try, our goal is to create a database where we have real-time visibility to open beds for mental health and substance use disorder, so that we're able to get them the help on time, not, I could help you a week from now, or I could help you, you got to wait 4 days before we can help you. And the deal is that Juan is going to be checked on by Arturo, who happens to be his peer. When he meets him, he's going to go there, be with him, stay with him until he doesn't need him anymore. Either he tells him, I don't need you anymore, thanks a lot, you kind of like, thank you, you did what you needed to do. But some people need longer help and some people need less help. So the deal is that Juan receives the support that he needs. He keeps his housing, he keeps his job, and his help in the transition, detox to outpatient and beyond. And this is what we're trying to create here we made it short, it's, because of time, but this is our goal. Our goal is to be able to do that. Here, Angie, you could get rid of and
Can we have that, those slides, and I can mail them out to people with the material that Ralph is giving me too? And also, how can we support this proposal?
Yep. I can follow up with a leave behind. We're actually pulling all of this information into a proposal where we'll be seeking funding from the county and from the city.
You on share? Can you take please, so that we could see everyone? Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
Thank you. Yep, sorry about that.
And at the time you have it ready, will you give us a sample letter to sign or a petition to sign so that we can put some pressure on these people?
That's exactly what our ask for support is we have a letter of support template, and we are collecting letters of support to accompany this proposal. And so exactly that, I'll follow up with our letter of support template. If you are looking for more information, if this piqued your interest and you'd like to, see more, Carlos and I'd be happy to talk with you offline, but we really just want to get the word out, right? That there is a better way to do this. There is, there was at least some political will towards making changes in this direction. At least it was written down in the Race Commission report. And I think what we'd really like help with is putting pressure on the administration to, do what they said they would do, and look at this as a solution to what was proposed.
Who has a word, a question, an observation? Kathleen McGrail, I bet you're just jumping to say something about this. No, well, I'm going to try to speak for you then, because Kathleen's a medical doctor, retired, who has worked in clinics and still does as a volunteer. And she sees people coming in with a prescription here and an appointment there, and they have no way to get from one to the other. And my own granddaughter worked for Rochester Regional Health with the people that you are describing. Mental health, her cases were mental health people, and that's not while they were in crisis, just to see that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they have food, that they have furnishings, they have clothing, they have shelter. And she was all alone in doing that, all alone. She loved it, except for the being alone part. That there was, in other words, reporting was not real reporting, and supervision was not genuine.
Yeah.
She was just out there. And we all know what happened to Daniel Prude. I mean, it's just, and even that 9-year-old girl that was thrown in the back of a squad car handcuffed, she was in crisis because her mother was in crisis. And we need this desperately. Many of us who work for various congregations have done Stephen ministry over the years, and that is peer counseling, peer mentoring. A woman who has had breast surgery is an ideal peer minister to another person in the congregation who's had a similar problem. A woman who's an alcoholic in recovery is a wonderful mentor to another, and on and on. So we want to support you. Tell us when and how, and we will. Has anyone a word for them all? For yes, Denise.
I just want to say thank you, Carlos and Angie. I put a message in the chat. Excuse me. I work for East House as the healthcare coordinator, and this has been one of the gripes that I've had over the last year. Clients going to the hospital, SI, HI, MHT, and they're being released in 3 to 4 hours. It's very sad and it's upsetting. I voiced my opinion, but thank you for making a difference and recognizing that.
Yeah,
The reason why I did this was, and I do briefly, is my son happened to have a schizophrenic episode, and my son didn't have no problem when it came to mental health. And what I went through to get, if it wasn't because I knew people in the field and I'm an advocate, I don't know what would have happened to my son. It could have been worse, but it was so hard for me to get the services.
Yeah.
And so I don't want this to happen to anybody out there.
Yeah.
And then I think about Mr. Prue and you
Yeah.
know, wait a minute, you know,
Yeah.
that could have been my son out there, you know, and so no.
Yes.
No. And then I'm thinking it's drugs. And it wasn't drugs. He was having something that never had happened to him before, which was schizophrenia.
Yes.
And so I think that we need to have the services for those people that need it, but we need to have them by people that live in the community, that know the system, that know how they, you know, how to help them with that, their life experience, like you said, Denise.
Yeah, peer support is a wonderful avenue also. So yeah, I know you guys are going to do great with that, and I'll stay posted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really encourage you to keep on pushing this. We just have to make it happen. It's desperately needed. It's life-saving. Anybody have any questions for Lentori or for Denise or for Angie or for Carlos?
Can I just ask, so we will get the information of how to do the letters of support and all of that through you, Denny, or
Yeah.
I think it's truly important.
Yes.
For us to work on this.
Yeah.
My son is actually in Strong's psychiatric hospital right now. And what I find is, because I'm a retired nurse and I know how things work, I've also dealt with East House, which was a place my son lived through their organization. He's now deceased, my other son, but East House was so helpful to us. But we had to fight every absolute inch of the way. And I always say the things that I found is I know what to say. I know what to ask for, and I know
Yes,
what is right. And there are so
yes,
many people who don't.
they
And
are.
I think the
Yeah,
idea of peer support is
yeah,
so important.
yes.
So
Mhm.
I think this is such a valuable thing, and I would love to see us really, you know, be able to stand behind it and give you the support that you need. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
I
for
think if
bringing
we were
this.
to go to each one, we would each have an experience very close to home. My
Mhm.
granddaughter's boyfriend's brother is right now in crisis, and they
Yeah.
don't know what to do.
Mhm.
And interestingly, his grandfather just died and his grandmother is dying. So, I
Mm.
mean, so it's trauma upon trauma upon
It
trauma.
is. That's
And this
exactly what it
happens in
is.
every family. And
Mhm.
there's got to be help. Got to be.
Yeah.
They just, they've tried everything.
Mhm.
They don't know what to do. So I have a great deal of gratitude to the presenters today. You have touched our hearts and you have commanded our attention, and we promise you we will follow through. As soon as we hear from you, we will follow. And don't feel pressure to do it fast because you want to do it well.
Thank you, everyone.
But we're with you. We're solidly with you. Now I have a few announcements, and one is for tonight. At 5:30 tonight in my neighborhood, this is Community Place at 145 Parcells Avenue, is Elevating Youth and Parent Voices and the Rochester City School District. They want to hear children, parents, and the community. And that's who we are. So if you can possibly get down to 145 Parcells Avenue tonight at 5:30 to listen to these voices of children, teachers, and the community speak up for children. It's going to be repeated on May 13th and on April 20th. And it's at the bottom of your agenda today. So you don't have to be madly taking notes if you save that email. 5:30 at the David Gantz Center, 700 North Street on April 20th. And at noon at the Boys and Girls Club at 500 Genesee Street on May 13th. And there's going to be food involved. So bring your grandchildren or whatever. On March 21st, you're invited to rally with Asim Johnson, who is ROCAC's Poverty Jobs Healthcare Housing Task Force Chair. And he happens to work for 1199 SEIU union. And they say that we are in an unprecedented healthcare crisis. Nursing homes need 20% increase in Medicaid rates. Hospitals need 10% increase to address healthcare staffing crisis and raise wages for upstate hospital and nursing home workers. And, you know, we all found this wonderful word, wonderful phrase, essential workers during the COVID crisis. And believe it or not, to this day, some are not paid a living wage. There's something to be said for essential and living. I mean, how can they not connect? It just is appalling. So go with Asim to the March 21st rally in Albany. Ralph and I just survived a rally in Albany on February 8th. It is survivable. It's really a wonderful experience. So do go, and you'll see Asim Johnson's phone number in today's agenda at the very bottom. Yes, Barry. You need to be unmuted, Barry.
I was just saying there are people in line before me. Ralph Carter, for instance, is in the line before me. I was
Okay.
actually just going to inform people that tomorrow at the Interfaith Alliance meeting, Ralph Carter, who was on the board of ROCACS and represents ROCACS at the Police Accountability Board, he and Jaleel Montaking from the Special Projects Coordinator of Citizen Action will be talking about a movement to end carceral slavery in New York State, and they will be at the TIAR meeting tomorrow. And if anybody wants the link, just get in touch with me, baswan@aol.com, and I'll see you tomorrow, Ralph.
And that's a Zoom link at what time?
I'm sorry. The meeting's at 4. Ralph and Jaleel will be speaking at 4:45.
Good. And it's on Zoom.
It's on Zoom.
Oh,
Yes.
that's terrific. Terrific.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And Denise, your hand is up.
Oh, I already spoke, just saying.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Then we are ready for Ralph to speak give us your justice. Yeah. Unmute yourself.
Danny, I
Okay.
have a couple of announcements.
Okay, thank you. Do you want Ralph to go first or William first? Either
Well,
under
you finished,
pressure.
are you finishing announcements, or we're going to have another announcement time?
Ralph has a little presentation to give us from his task force. Is it more than an announcement or?
It's very short.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Link. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
Ralph.
Reverend. I put in the link, and it will be in the mailing. The report of the Justice System Task Force. We had a rousing meeting. If members of your congregations, organization would like to participate in our monthly discussion, it would be and understanding of what our priorities need to be, please join us. I wanted to specifically mention 2 of the things that we talked about at length yesterday, or not yesterday, earlier in the week. One, they're both related directly and indirectly to our major themes today regarding health. You mentioned Daniel Prude. In the report, Jonathan Wagbarosha, who has been in weekly meetings several times a week with the teams in Albany, supporting Senator Summer Brook and others who are leading this effort. She's the chair of the Mental Health Committee for the Senate in New York State. Some remarkable work that's being done there. There are very specific things that each of us can do. March 20, is it 23rd, is actually the anniversary. I mean, recognizing the death of, very unfortunately and completely unnecessary, of Daniel Prude. So there's a trip to Albany. They're contacting public officials. All of that opportunity is in our report. It's linked in the chat. It'll go out in the mail. Also, if you go to rochesteracts.org, click on the Daniel Prude image. That's also, you can get to it's all up to date, will be updated behind the scenes through that coalition statewide. That's the leaders for which are in Rochester because of the situation that Rochester suffered, and the family of Daniel Prude. That's driving this need and the urgent need for appropriate healthcare response, and for police to not be involved into that which is not their responsibility, and creating more of a problem that it is solving, which is my second point. The Police Accountability Board Alliance. I happen to serve on that on behalf of ROCAX with Dr. Gail Harrison and Roberta Davis. Thank goodness, through the Interfaith Alliance of Rochester, is a leading voice in that effort to support the 5 pillars of the Police Accountability Board, which the citizens, as everyone here knows, supported overwhelmingly and has been attacked this last year. There is a call for community engagement to step back into the kinds of efforts that the community was engaged in to stand up this alliance, which is unique throughout the whole country. And as Roberta Davis has so eloquently shared, reminds us that this approach is really requiring a different approach. And Roberta, I'm not going to say it the way you do so eloquently. Maybe you should say that, but it has to do with that the indigenous way of solving community problems requires power sharing, requires listening to one another, It requires mutual forbearance. It requires speaking truth to power, but in a loving way. And our faith traditions call us also into that way of being, but I think being so manifest in the way that in first people of this land model continuously for us and a way forward. And the best ideals of our faith traditions also echo that. So I urge you to read the some of the things, the summary of some of the things that have been happening. That is an attempt, or that we see in the Alliance as attempts to dismantle the police accountability effort in Rochester, and a call to action. So these are all interrelated topics. So those are the two major ones I wanted to bring to the attention of the Religious Leaders Caucus. Thank you.
And Ralph, are we to go to a city council meeting soon? Again with signs?
Yes.
When is that?
We also need to be present to this. We have we'll include that also.
Please.
We've written a call to join in the effort to stand up police accountability. Some very specific ways to engage in that. So it involves being present with the Police Accountability Board, being present with City Council, and the difficulty, of course, you may not be aware. City Council meets on Tuesday evenings. Police Accountability meets on Thursday. Council saw in their infinite wisdom to move Speak the Council to Thursday night, the very same time the Police Accountability Board meets.
Wow.
To diminish.
And that's a direct response from you and me and 30 other people carrying signs to the city council meeting, where Samra Brook was the only one. Stanley Martin was the only one to recognize us. It was a good meeting, honoring people for doing good work. But here we sat with these signs, and it was only Stanley Martin who recognized us. We need to show up again. We do. We need to be there. Now, Barry, your hand is up, but I think you've already spoken. Is that adequate? Or do you have more to say? You're muted. Okay. Reverend Wilkinson. Reverend Wilkinson.
Well, the work that Denny and Ralph have been outlining is the forerunner of the essential work of Rock Acts. There are two opportunities that are coming up that are going to help us to build up the community organizing work of Rock Acts. The first one is that after 10 years, we're going to be having our first quarterly assembly of all the member organizations and members of Rock Acts at the Downtown United Presbyterian Church, 3 in the afternoon on April 16th. You'll be getting more information about this, but it'll be a 2-hour meeting that'll happen on April 16th, the first quarterly assembly meeting of Rock Acts. In the next week, we have an opportunity to participate in the Northeast Regional Training of Faith in Action, which Rock Acts is a local federation. The meeting will be in New York City at the Crown Plaza Motel at John F. Kennedy Airport. We're going to be carpooling on the 25th at 7 in the morning and leaving for the 6-hour journey to be in time for the meeting, which will start at 3 in the afternoon. It's a 2.5-day meeting that will end on Friday, the 28th at noon in honor of the Sabbath, so that folks can be back at their places of worship by Sabbath days and the various faiths that will be there. This is a wonderful opportunity, and we're hoping to get at least 15 to 20 people from our area to go to this training. This is a training on techniques of organizing that we will share in common. And one of the beauties of this training is the relationships that we build on the way, the relationships that we have between the meetings, and the people we will meet from the other parts of the Northeast, which goes from Maine all the way down to Maryland. So we just, well, you'll be hearing more information, but begin to think about these dates and clear your ways. And remember that it's not just you who is invited, but someone from your organizations as well. So you may, in fact, the work of you going may be getting somebody else to go.
Mhm.
But we're able to get as many. And now the cost of this is $100, which includes the hotel, the registration, and everything that you need there. And for those who register who are members of Rock Acts or Rock Acts organizations, the organization is going to subsidize that. For others who have been active members of this caucus, the same would go for you. An investment in ourselves to build up the work of organizing.
I am so glad to hear this. Yay! And know that, let's see, if you're not a member of Angie, for instance, you're not a member of Rock Acts. If you'd like to talk about membership, I'd be delighted to talk with you. And at the bottom of today's agenda, there's actually a link to membership information if you want to look it over. But don't feel stuck on that, because everything is negotiable. Love to talk with anyone who, I think you're all, Keith, I bet you would love to look at that membership information, and let's have a conversation soon. Good to be with you all. Now, I don't see Reverend Cunningham still on the call. Reverend William, would you be so kind as to close us with prayer?
Let's just hear a prayer from Sister Joyce Rock. You know, she has this way of, in all humility, bringing wisdom and prayer that really connects us to us and spirit of life. In an attitude of prayer, hear her words as our prayer. Tender-hearted one, you continually walk with us. We are not alone when our spirits droop in the hazy grayness of life. Keep teaching us how necessary it is to care well for ourselves, to trust that the valley of darkness that we walk through is a part of the process of transformation. We place our hands in yours once again and move forward with hope at your loving presence. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much for being with us today, for all of the work that you're doing. And please, those of you who have these links and connections that you want us to have, please email them to me, because I can't write all that. And I don't know how to transfer it from here. And the chat isn't always saved for me. Duncan is the host, and he'll try, but sure I get it so that I can get it out to you. Please email it to me and I will get it to everyone. Thank you. And just an update for the April 19th meeting of this caucus. You're all invited, and we'll meet from 11:30 to 1. And thus far, we have Ruth Marchetti speaking for the Climate Justice Task Force, just days before Earth Day. And Kim, who is the director of Family Promise that we used to call RAIN, that so many of our churches are active in. And it's not anywhere near doing enough for Rochester's homeless, but it is one of the many efforts to care for homeless families. I think it's the only one that cares for the families. So join us the third Wednesday of April. It's April 19th. And thanks so much for being with us today. And please keep Lentori and her work, and Carlos and Angie and their work in your prayer. Thanks, and God bless. Thank you all.